The transport ship docked at Beacon 7 with barely a whisper against the station's outer hull. Inside the massive trading hub, thousands of beings from across the galaxy moved through corridors wide enough to accommodate the largest species. The air hummed with translator signals, converting growls and clicks and harmonic vibrations into understandable speech. Elena Morgan stepped off the transport carrying a single bag. She wore plain gray clothing, soft boots that made no sound on the metal floor, and no protective gear of any kind. Her brown hair was pulled back simply. She looked like someone who had just arrived for a vacation, not someone entering one of the most dangerous stations in known space. Around her, the crowd moved like a living thing, and the Chakran walked with crystal bodies that vibrated warnings when anyone came too close. Their surfaces caught the light and threw it back in sharp angles. The Horth stood nearly 3 meters tall, their bodies covered in thick bone plates that clicked together when they moved. The Zealoths slithered between larger species, their venomous spines gleaming wet with toxins that could drop a fully armored soldier in seconds. Every species here was a predator. Every single one had evolved to kill. Elena walked forward, her steps quiet and steady. She did not hurry. She did not look around nervously like most humans did when they first arrived. She simply moved through the crowd with her bag held loosely in one hand. Then something strange happened. A Chakran merchant who had been vibrating aggressively at a customer suddenly went still. The vibration stopped completely. The merchant turned its crystalline head to watch Elena pass. The customer, another Chakran, also stopped and watched. Elena did not acknowledge them. She kept walking. 50 meters ahead, 2 Horth were locked in a territorial display. Their bone plates rattled against each other, creating a sound like rocks falling down a mountain. They had been blocking the corridor for nearly an hour. Station security had given up trying to move them and simply rerouted foot traffic. Elena walked directly toward them. Vornak, the Horth security officer monitoring the situation, leaned forward at his station. He watched the small human approach the 2 massive warriors. She was maybe a quarter of their size. She carried nothing that could threaten them. She made almost no sound at all. The 2 Horth warriors stopped rattling. They turned to look at her. Then slowly they stepped apart. Elena walked between them without pausing, without speaking, without even looking up. Vornak stood from his chair. In 20 years of security work, he had never seen anything like that. Horth warriors did not yield. Not to threats, not to weapons, not to anything. Yet they had moved aside for a small, quiet human carrying a medical bag. He began following her through the security cameras. Elena continued through the station. Everywhere she went, the same thing happened. Zealoth merchants who normally hissed at anyone who came near their stalls went silent. Kravix traders who displayed their claws at the slightest challenge pulled their hands back. Even the few Draknor visitors, massive pack hunters who feared nothing, watched her pass with what looked almost like caution. She was not doing anything. She was just walking. Her face was calm, her breathing steady. She looked around occasionally, checking corridor signs, but otherwise she might as well have been alone. A young Chakran bumped into her accidentally. The merchant spun around, ready to vibrate an aggressive warning. Then it saw her face. The vibrations died immediately. The merchant backed away and lowered its crystalline head. Elena nodded politely and continued walking. Vornak switched camera feeds, tracking her progress. He pulled up her arrival records. Dr. Elena Morgan, human physician, medical specialist. She had requested temporary quarters near the quarantine section. Nothing unusual in her records. No military service, no security clearances, no weapons permits. As she was exactly what she appeared to be, a doctor. So why was every predator species on the station treating her like a threat? He decided to follow her in person. Vornak caught up to Elena 3 corridors from the quarantine section. Up close, she looked even less threatening. She was small even for a human, probably not more than 60 kilograms. Her hands were soft, built for delicate work. Her eyes were brown and calm. She glanced at him once, nodded in greeting, and kept walking. Dr. Morgan, Vornak said, his translator converting his rumbling Horth speech into standard Galactic. I am Station Security Officer Vornak. May I ask your business on Beacon 7? Medical consultation, Elena said without stopping. Her voice was quiet and steady. "Here in the quarantine section." "The quarantine section is currently housing a zealous juvenile," Vornak said. "The child is dying. Its venom glands are infected and leaking. No medical staff will enter because the child cannot control its defensive responses. It is too dangerous." "I know," Elena said. "That's why I'm here." Vornak stopped walking. Elena continued for a few steps, then paused and looked back at him. She did not look annoyed or impatient. She just waited. "You intend to treat the child alone?" Vornak asked. "Without protective gear? Without restraints?" "Yes," Elena said. "That is suicide," Vornak said flatly. "The child's spines will fire reflexively. The venom will kill you in minutes. There is no antidote for humans." Elena looked at him for a long moment. Her expression did not change. "Here, are you going to stop me?" she asked quietly. Vornak realized something then. He was 3 times her size. His bone plating could stop blade weapons. His strength could crush metal. Yet every instinct in his body was telling him not to challenge this small, soft, quiet human. He stepped aside. Elena nodded and continued walking. Now, within minutes, she had reached the quarantine section. Through the observation window, Vornak could see the zealous child curled in the corner. Its parents stood outside, their bodies shaking with grief. They had already accepted their child's death. Elena set down her bag and began removing her jacket. She rolled up her sleeves carefully. Then she walked to the quarantine door and pressed the release. The child's parents let out a hissing cry of warning. Elena ignored them. The door opened. She stepped inside. The child sensed movement and spun around. Its spines extended fully, dripping with venom. Its mouth opened in a fear display, showing rows of crystalline teeth. It was cornered and terrified. Elena walked forward slowly. She did not make sudden movements. She did not speak. She simply approached with the same steady, quiet patience she had shown walking through the station. The child fired 3 spines. They flew past Elena's head, missing by centimeters. She did not flinch. She did not even blink. She just kept walking. Vornak watched from outside, his body frozen. The child was firing randomly now, fear overriding all control. Spines embedded in the walls. Venom pooled on the floor. Elena stepped carefully around the toxic puddles, her movements precise and unhurried. She reached the child. She knelt down slowly. The child had no more spines to fire. It curled tighter, waiting for death. Elena opened her medical bag and began working. Vornak spent the next 6 hours searching through every database the station had access to. He sat in his security office surrounded by holographic screens, each one displaying information about humans and their evolutionary history. What he found disturbed him more than any weapon he had ever encountered. Humans had evolved on a planet called Earth, alongside creatures that could have ruled half the galaxy. There were great cats with teeth as long as knives. There were bears that stood 4 meters tall. There were wolves that hunted in packs of 50 or more. And humans, small and soft and slow, had survived them all. Not by being stronger, not by being faster, by being relentless. Vornak read about something called persistence hunting. Ancient humans would wound an animal and then simply follow it. For hours, for days, sometimes for a full week. The prey would run until it could not run anymore. It would rest, and the humans would appear on the horizon again. It would run again, and again the humans would follow. Eventually, the prey would collapse from exhaustion, and the humans would walk up to it calmly and finish what they had started. The humans never stopped. They never gave up. They just kept coming. Vornak looked through the window at the quarantine room. Elena was still working on the zealous child, her movements careful and precise. 8 hours had passed. She had not left. She had not rested. She simply continued treating the infected venom glands with the same steady patience. The door to his office opened. Dr. Kelvin Hayes entered, a human researcher who had been living on Beacon 7 for 2 years. He was tall for his species, with gray hair and sharp eyes behind thin glasses. "You have been researching my species," Kelvin said. It was not a question. "Dr. Morgan walked through this station and every predator moved aside for her," Vornak said. "I need to understand why." Kelvin walked to the window and looked down at Elena. "How much have you learned about human evolution?" "Enough to know that your species survived by never stopping," Vornak said. "Persistence hunting. You chased prey until it died from exhaustion." "That is part of it," Kelvin said. But there is something else, something we carry in our biology that predator species recognize on an instinctive level. He pulled up a holographic display showing chemical structures. Humans produce a specific combination of pheromones. We have produced this same combination for millions of years, unchanged. It is the scent marker of a persistence predator. Other Earth predators evolved to produce fear or aggression markers. Humans evolved to produce something different. What? Vornak asked. Inevitability, Kelvin said quietly. The scent says, I will follow you forever. I will never stop. You can run, but I will find you. You can hide, but I will wait. Time is on my side, not yours. Vornak stared at the chemical display. And other predator species can detect this? On a subconscious level, yes, Kelvin said. Toneki, on every predator species in the galaxy evolved with some concept of pursuit, fight-or-flight responses. But those responses assume the threat will eventually give up or lose interest. Humans trigger a different response. We trigger the understanding that fleeing will not work, that fighting will not work, that the only option is to yield or be pursued until collapse. Down in the quarantine room, Elena had finished cleaning the child's infected glands. She was now applying a synthetic membrane that would allow them to heal. The child had stopped struggling hours ago. It lay still, watching her with large eyes. Its parents watched from outside, their bodies pressed against the glass. She is not afraid, Vornak observed. Fear is an emotion designed to help you escape danger, Kelvin said. But Elena knows that fear would not help her here. Oh, the child's responses are automatic. Being afraid would not make the spines less venomous. Being afraid would not make her movements more precise. So she simply works without fear, the same way humans have worked for millions of years. This seems like a dangerous way to live, Vornak said. Perhaps, Kelvin agreed, but it kept us alive when everything else on our planet wanted to eat us. And now it makes us very effective at certain tasks. The door opened again. Station Administrator Thexal entered, his crystalline body vibrating with irritation. He was a chakran of high rank, his crystal formations elaborate and sharp. Security Officer Vornak, Thexal said, his voice translated from harmonic vibrations. I have received 17 complaints about disruptions in the commercial sectors. And merchants claim their customers are distracted. Warriors claim their territorial displays are being ignored. All complaints mention a human walking through the area. Explain this disruption. Kelvin and Vornak exchanged glances. Kelvin spoke first. Administrator, humans do not disrupt predator interactions intentionally, but we do trigger certain instinctive responses. What responses? Thexal demanded. Humans evolved as persistence predators, Kelvin explained. We produce pheromone markers that other predator species recognize on an instinctive level. When a human passes through an area, predators experience a subconscious urge to stop aggressive displays and allow passage. It is similar to how prey species freeze when they sense a predator nearby, except the response is reversed. Thexal's vibrations slowed, and he was processing this information. You are saying that humans trigger predator species to behave like prey? No, Kelvin said carefully. We trigger them to recognize something that will not stop hunting them if they become targets. The appropriate response is not to act like prey. The appropriate response is not to become prey in the first place, to avoid notice, to let the human pass. Thexal turned to look at Elena through the window. She had finished treating the child and was now sitting quietly in the corner of the quarantine room, allowing the child to rest. She had been inside for 9 hours without protective gear, surrounded by enough venom to kill her 20 times over. This is unacceptable, Thexal said. Beacon 7 is a station where strength is respected, not where predator species conduct business according to clear hierarchies. Humans cannot be allowed to disrupt this order by triggering inappropriate responses in other species. An alarm sounded before Vornak could respond. The security console lit up with urgent warnings. Vornak's hands moved quickly across the controls, pulling up external camera feeds. We have a situation, he said. A merchant vessel, the trade ship Golden Path, has been seized by Kravik's pirates. They are holding the crew hostage and demanding payment in untraceable currency. 23 hostages total. Thexal's vibrations increased in frequency. Dispatch armed response teams immediately. The pirates have fortified their position inside the vessel, Vornak said, reading the tactical data. Any assault will result in hostage casualties. They know our protocols. Below them, Elena stood up in the quarantine room. She had heard the alarm. She walked to the door and pressed the release. The Zalith child was sleeping now, its breathing steady and calm. She stepped out and looked up at the observation window. I can negotiate, she said quietly. The three of them stared down at her. Thexal's vibrations stopped completely. Even through the thick glass, even across species, the silence was profound. The shuttle moved through empty space toward the captured merchant vessel. Elena sat alone in the passenger compartment, her medical bag beside her. Through the viewport, she could see the golden path hanging motionless against the stars. Kravik's patrol ships circled it like scavengers around a kill. Inside the station command center, Vornak, Kelvin, and Thexal watched through the shuttle's external cameras. The administrator's crystalline body had been vibrating constantly since Elena volunteered. Even for a human, this seemed like suicide. The communication channel crackled. A rough voice came through, translated from Kravik's clicking sounds. We detect a shuttle approaching. Turn back or we destroy you. Elena pressed the transmit button. My name is Dr. Elena Morgan. I am here to check on the medical condition of your hostages. I am unarmed and alone. Silence followed. Then harsh clicking laughter came through the speakers. The soft species sends one small female to negotiate? This is an insult. I am not here to negotiate, Elena said calmly. I am here to provide medical care. Whether you accept payment or not is your decision. But if any hostages die from preventable medical conditions, their deaths will be on your record. More silence. Vornak watched the Kravik's patrol ships on the monitors. They were holding position, weapons charged but not firing. The pirates were confused. This was not how negotiations normally proceeded. You may approach, the voice said finally, but if you carry weapons, you will die immediately. I understand, Elena said. The shuttle docked with the golden path. Elena stood, picked up her medical bag, and walked to the airlock. She did not hesitate. She did not check for weapons or protective gear. She simply pressed the release and stepped through. The airlock on the other side opened. 6 Kravik's warriors stood waiting, their segmented bodies covered in sharp chitinous armor. They were built like Earth's praying mantises, but 2 meters tall with blade-like forearms that could cut through steel. Their compound eyes reflected the corridor lights in 1,000 facets. Elena walked forward. The Kraviks did not move. She passed between them, her footsteps quiet on the metal floor. The pirate leader, Zexmoth, waited in the cargo bay. He was larger than the other Kraviks, his armor darker and more scarred. Around him, the 23 hostages sat on the floor with their hands bound. They were mostly Chakran and Horth merchants, with a few smaller species mixed in. All of them looked terrified. So the soft species sends their healer, Zexmoth said, his mandibles clicking together. What do you hope to accomplish, human? We will take our payment whether your people live or die. Elena set down her bag and looked at the hostages. I need to examine them. If some of them are injured, Zexmoth gestured with one-bladed arm. Do what you wish. It changes nothing. We have made our demands clear. Your station has 6 more hours to transfer the payment. After that, we begin killing hostages. Elena knelt beside the nearest hostage, a Chakran merchant with cracks in his crystalline structure. She opened her bag and began working. The Kravik's guards watched her carefully, their blade arms ready. Hours passed. Elena moved from hostage to hostage, treating injuries and checking vital signs. She worked slowly and carefully, her hands steady. She did not speak unless spoken to. She did not make demands. She simply continued her work with the same quiet patience she had shown with the Zelith child. Zexmoth watched her with growing irritation. Where are your weapons, human? Where is your military response? Your station should have sent soldiers by now. Elena finished bandaging a Horth merchant's arm and moved to the next hostage. I do not know what the station plans to do. That is not my concern. Then what is your concern? Zexmoth demanded, moving closer to her. Making sure these people do not die from untreated injuries, Elena said without looking up from her work. Zexmoth's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. You waste your time. If your station does not pay, they all die anyway. Perhaps, Elena said, but not from infected wounds or dehydration. One of the Kravik's guards shifted nervously. He had been watching Elena for 3 hours now. She had not flinched when he displayed his blade arms. She had not shown fear when Zexmoth threatened the hostages. She just kept working, moving from person to person with unhurried precision. The guard did not understand why this made him uncomfortable. The human was small and weak. She had no weapons. She was completely at their mercy. Yet something about her presence felt wrong, like standing on ground that looked solid but might collapse at any moment. 6 hours became 12. The deadline passed. Zexmoth screamed at the communication console, demanding to know why the station had not paid. The response was calm and bureaucratic. The station council was reviewing the demands. A decision would be made soon. Please stand by. Zexmoth turned to Elena. Your people abandon you. They will let you die here with the others. Elena had finished treating all the hostages. She sat on the floor near them, drinking water from a small bottle. They are not abandoning me. They know I will wait as long as necessary. Wait for what? Zexmoth shouted. For rescue? For a miracle? You have no leverage here, human. Elena looked at him with calm brown eyes. I am not waiting for rescue. I am simply waiting. Humans are very good at waiting. Another 6 hours passed. The Kravik's guards began to pace. They were predators built for quick strikes and rapid escapes. Long sieges made them nervous. They kept looking at Elena, who sat motionless except when checking on the hostages. She had been aboard the ship for 18 hours. She had not slept. She had barely eaten. But her eyes were still calm and alert. Zexmoth approached her again. What is your plan, human? Tell me. I do not understand what you hope to accomplish. Elena stood up slowly. She was so much smaller than him, barely reaching his thorax. But she looked directly into his compound eyes without fear. My species evolved on a dangerous world, she said quietly. We were surrounded by predators faster than us, stronger than us, better armed than us. We survived by learning one thing very well. We learned to outlast everything else. We learned that time is a weapon. We learned that patience is a form of strength that most predators cannot match. She paused, letting her words settle. You want confrontation. You want violence or surrender. You want this situation to resolve quickly so you can move on to your next target. But I do not need this to resolve quickly. I can wait here for days, for weeks, for however long it takes, and I will not stop. I will not give up. I will simply continue to exist in your space, waiting, until you decide that leaving is easier than staying. Zexmoth stared at her. For the first time since the hijacking began, he felt something he had not expected to feel. Not fear exactly, something deeper, an ancient instinct that whispered a simple truth. This prey would never stop following. The 30th hour arrived and Zexmoth made his decision. He ordered his warriors to release the hostages and retreat to their patrol ships. Elena stood quietly and watched as the Kravik's pirates fled without their ransom, without their threats being fulfilled, without anything except a desperate need to get away from the small human who would not stop waiting. The hostages were returned to Beacon 7. Medical teams took over their care. Station security detained no one because the pirates had already jumped to faster-than-light travel, to putting as much distance as possible between themselves and the human doctor. The news spread across the station within hours, then across nearby systems, then across half the galaxy. A human had negotiated a hostage release without weapons, without threats, without even raising her voice. She had simply waited until the pirates could not stand her presence anymore. Galactic media struggled to explain what had happened. Military analysts studied the recordings. Behavioral scientists debated the mechanisms. But no one could quite capture in words what everyone who watched the footage instinctively understood. Humans were patient in ways that predator species could not match. Within a week, the first request arrived. 2 Horth clans had been locked in a territorial dispute over mining rights on an asteroid, and they had been displaying aggression at each other for 3 months. Could a human mediator help resolve the situation? Elena accepted. She traveled to the asteroid and sat between the 2 clan leaders for 5 days. She did not argue. She did not take sides. She simply sat and listened and occasionally asked quiet questions. On the 6th day, both clans agreed to share the mining rights equally, just so they could end the uncomfortable presence of the human who would clearly sit there forever if necessary. More requests followed: a trade dispute between Chakran merchants, a border conflict between Zealoth colonies, a contract disagreement between Kravik shipping companies. Each time a human was requested. Each time the solution came not from force but from patience that outlasted aggression. Kelvin Hayes watched this transformation with fascination. He began documenting the process, interviewing the humans who served as mediators and the aliens who requested their services. What he discovered changed his understanding of his own species. "We think of ourselves as weak," Kelvin told Vornak one evening in the station's observation deck. "Humans look at other species with their armor and their weapons and their natural defenses, and we feel inferior. But we have been carrying a weapon all along. We just never recognized it as such." Vornak had been studying human biology for weeks now. "Your endurance," he said. "More than that," Kelvin replied. "Our psychological endurance. Most predator species evolved to resolve conflicts quickly. Fight or flee, win or lose, live or die. Fast resolution is built into their instincts. But humans evolved in an environment where quick resolution was rarely possible. We could not outrun the lions. We could not outfight the bears. So we learned to wait, to persist, to keep trying long after any reasonable creature would have given up." He pulled up data on his portable screen. "I have been analyzing the settlement times for conflicts before and after human mediation. The average drops from months to days. Not because we force faster decisions, because the other species cannot psychologically handle extended standoffs the way we can. They need resolution. We just need patience." Thexal joined them at the observation window. The Chakran administrator had been notably quiet since the hostage incident. His vibrations were low and thoughtful. "The Council has received a proposal," Thexal said. "Several member species want to establish a formal human mediation service. They suggest stationing humans at conflict zones across the galaxy." "What do you think of this proposal?" Kelvin asked. Thexal's crystal body caught the starlight and scattered it in complex patterns. "I think I misunderstood your species. I believe the galaxy had a clear hierarchy. Predator species at the top, based on combat capability and physical threat. I believed humans were near the bottom of this hierarchy because you lack natural weapons." "And now?" Vornak prompted. "Now I understand that there are different types of strength," Thexal said quietly. "You do not dominate through fear. You dominate through time. You wait until fear exhausts itself. This is a power I did not know existed." Elena walked past them in the observation deck. She was heading to the shuttle bay for another mediation assignment. She nodded politely at the three of them and continued on her way, her footsteps quiet and her pace unhurried. "She does not see it as power," Kelvin observed. "That is what makes it effective. Elena genuinely just wants to help. The patience is not a tactic for her. It is simply how she exists in the world." A young woman entered the observation deck looking nervous. Her name was Lisa Grant, a recent arrival to Beacon 7 who had come to study interspecies relations. She had been watching Elena's work with intense interest. "Dr. Hayes," Lisa said hesitantly, "I wanted to ask you about the mediation training program you mentioned." "You want to become a mediator?" Kelvin asked. "I think so," Lisa said, "but I am not sure I can do what Dr. Morgan does. I am not naturally patient. I get anxious when conflicts last too long." Kelvin smiled. "Do you know what Elena told me when I asked her about patience? She said it is not about being naturally calm. It is about understanding that anxiety does not help, that worry does not speed resolution. So she chooses not to waste energy on those emotions." "That sounds impossible," Lisa said. "It is a skill," Kelvin replied. "Like any skill, it can be learned. Humans have been practicing it for millions of years. It is in your genetics, even if it does not feel natural right now." An emergency alert interrupted their conversation. The station's communications system broadcast an urgent message. A mining colony on the planet Krull 4 was under attack. The indigenous species, the Draknor, were claiming territorial violations. Our 20 miners were trapped. Standard security forces had failed to establish communication because the Draknor responded to armed presence with immediate violence. The message requested a human mediator. Thexal looked at Kelvin. "Dr. Morgan is already on assignment. Who else is qualified?" Kelvin turned to Lisa. "How quickly can you pack?" Lisa's face went pale. Me? I have never done this before. I have no training. I do not even know anything about the Draknor. The Draknor are pack hunters, Vornak said, pulling up data on his console. They are highly territorial and respond to any armed intrusion with lethal force. They have killed 3 security teams in the past month. They are considered one of the most dangerous predator species in this sector. Lisa looked like she might be sick. Cameraman, you want to send me alone to negotiate with them? Yes, Kelvin said simply. Why? Lisa asked. Why not wait for Dr. Morgan to return? Because 20 miners do not have time to wait, Kelvin said. And because you are human, you already have everything you need. You just have to trust it. Lisa looked out the observation window at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were in danger. Somewhere out there, a conflict was escalating. And they were asking her to walk into it alone with nothing but patience. What did Dr. Morgan say to you before her first mediation? Lisa asked quietly. Kelvin thought back. She said, I do not have to win. I just have to not give up. Lisa took a deep breath, then another. Then she nodded. Okay, I will go. The transport ship dropped Lisa at the mining colony on Krell 4 just after dawn. And the planet was harsh and rocky, with thin atmosphere and constant wind. The mining facility sat at the base of a cliff, surrounded by territorial markers that the Draknor had placed in a wide circle around their sacred caves. Lisa stepped off the transport, carrying only a small pack with water, food rations, and a basic first aid kit. She wore simple clothing and soft boots. Her hands shook slightly as she walked toward the territorial boundary. The Draknor appeared before she reached the markers. There were 7 of them, each one massive and covered in dark fur with silver markings. They moved on 4 legs but could rear up on 2 when displaying aggression. Their teeth were as long as her fingers. Their claws left deep grooves in the rock as they walked. The pack leader, Krath, stepped forward. He was the largest, and with scars across his face and shoulders. He growled low in his chest, a sound that Lisa felt in her bones. The translator device on her collar converted his words. Another one comes, another soft thing that does not understand boundaries. Leave now or die like the others. Lisa stopped at the territorial marker. Her heart was beating so fast she thought it might burst. Every instinct screamed at her to run. The Draknor were built for killing. One swipe of those claws would end her life instantly. But she thought about Elena sitting in a room full of venom. She thought about her own ancestors tracking prey across endless distances. She thought about millions of years of human evolution that had prepared her for exactly this moment. She sat down at the boundary marker. Krath's ears flattened against his skull. You do not hear? A leave or die. I hear you, Lisa said, her voice shaking only a little. But I cannot leave. The miners did not understand your territory. I am here to help fix this mistake. I will stay until we find a solution. There is no solution, Krath roared. They violated sacred ground. They dug into stone that belongs to our ancestors. The only solution is their departure or their death. Then I will wait here until they depart, Lisa said. But I cannot help them leave if I do not understand what happened. Krath stepped closer to the boundary. He could cross it in one leap. He could kill her before she could even stand. Lisa forced herself to breathe slowly. Panic would not help. Fear would not help. Only patience would help. You are not afraid, Krath observed, his head tilting. I am terrified, Lisa admitted. But being afraid will not solve this problem. So I choose to sit here and wait instead. The Draknor pack circled her, staying just beyond the territorial marker. They growled and displayed their teeth. Lisa sat quietly and watched them. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher. The wind picked up dust and blew it across the rocky ground. Lisa ate a ration bar slowly. She drank water. She did not leave. She did not send messages asking for help. She simply existed at the boundary, patient and present. By the second day, the Draknor stopped circling. They lay down in the shade of nearby rocks, watching her. Krath came close to the boundary several times, studying her with intelligent eyes. Lisa met his gaze calmly, then looked away. Not in submission, not in challenge, just acknowledgement. On the third day, when a younger Draknor approached the boundary cautiously, he sniffed the air near Lisa, trying to understand her scent. Lisa remained still. The young Draknor whined softly, confused. She smelled like prey, but she acted like something else entirely. Kraith called the young one back with a sharp bark. On the fourth day, Lisa woke from a light sleep to find Krath sitting directly across from her at the boundary line. He had been watching her for some time. The morning sun lit his silver markings, making them glow. "Why do you not leave?" he asked. "Your body is weak. The cold affects you. You should have died or fled by now." "My body is weak," Lisa agreed, "but my species learned to survive anyway. We learned to wait longer than our prey could run. We learned to persist longer than our predators could hunt. Time is our advantage. It was not strength." Krath's ears twitched. "The miners killed 3 of my pack when they came with weapons." Lisa felt a spike of grief. "I did not know. I am sorry. That should not have happened." "They did not ask permission," Krath continued. "They did not speak to us. They simply began digging. Our sacred caves hold the bones of ancestors going back 1,000 generations, and they were drilling into the walls." "I understand," Lisa said quietly. "If someone drilled into my ancestors' resting place, I would be angry too. The miners did not know, but not knowing does not make it acceptable." She pulled out a data pad from her pack and laid it on the ground between them. "Can you show me exactly where the sacred caves are? If I understand the boundaries, perhaps we can move the mining operation to a different location." Krath stared at the data pad for a long moment. Then slowly, he reached across the boundary and touched it with one massive claw. He pulled up a topographical map and marked several areas in red. "These caves are forbidden. The bones rest here. No digging in these places. Ever." Lisa studied the map. The current mining operation was directly above one of the largest cave systems. "I see the problem. The miners did not scan deep enough. They did not know the caves extended this far." She marked several areas in blue on the map. "What about these locations? No sacred caves?" Krath examined the map carefully. "These areas are acceptable. No ancestors rest there. The stone is only stone." "Then I can ask the miners to move their operation here," Lisa said. Would this resolve the conflict?" Krath looked at her for a long time. "You sat here for 4 days. You did not threaten. You did not demand. You simply waited until I was ready to speak." "Yes," Lisa said. "Why?" Krath asked. "Because you were not ready before," Lisa said simply. "And waiting does not cost me anything. I have time." Krath stood up on his hind legs, his full height nearly 3 meters. Lisa remained seated, looking up at him calmly. He could still kill her. He could always kill her. But that was not what this moment was about. "The miners may move to these locations," Krath said, gesturing at the blue areas on the map. "If they drill into sacred caves again, we will defend our ancestors. But if they respect the boundaries, we will have peace." "Thank you," Lisa said. She stood slowly, her legs stiff from days of sitting. "I will tell them immediately." She picked up her pack and began walking back toward the mining facility. Behind her, Krath called out, "Human, your species is strange. You have no claws, no teeth, no armor. But you have something we do not. You have endless time." Lisa turned back and smiled. "We had to develop something. We were too slow to run away." 2 weeks later, Lisa returned to Beacon 7. Elena was waiting at the docking bay. The older woman smiled and handed Lisa a cup of coffee. "I heard about Krell 4, Elena said. 4 days at a territorial boundary with pack hunters. How do you feel?" "Exhausted," Lisa admitted. "And different somehow. Like I understand something about myself that I did not understand before." "That is the gift," Elena said. "When understanding that patience is not weakness, that waiting is not surrender, that time is a form of power." They walked through the station together. Around them, predator species moved through their business. A few glanced at the 2 humans and stepped aside slightly, making space. Not from fear, from recognition. Kelvin met them at the observation deck with data pads full of reports. Human mediators were now stationed at 17 conflict zones. Settlement times were dropping dramatically. Several species had requested formal training in human patience techniques, though Kelvin was not sure those techniques could be taught to species with different evolutionary pressures. Thexel joined them, his crystalline body vibrating with what might have been approval. "The Council has voted," he announced. "Human mediation services are now officially recognized as a galactic resource. We have also updated our conflict resolution protocols to include patience thresholds. What does that mean? Lisa asked. It means we acknowledge that some conflicts cannot be rushed, Thexel said. That time itself can be a solution. That waiting is a valid strategy. Your species has taught us something we did not know we needed to learn. Elena looked out at the stars through the observation window. Somewhere out there, humans were sitting at boundaries, waiting in hostile territories, persisting through conflicts that had seemed unsolvable. They carried no weapons. They made no threats. They simply waited with the patient certainty of a species that had learned to outlast everything else on their homeworld. We are still learning it ourselves, Elena said softly. We just had a few million years to practice. A young chakran medical student approached Elena hesitantly. Dr. Morgan, there is a patient in emergency medical, a Kravix child with a severe allergic reaction. The parents are too aggressive to allow doctors near. I wondered if you could help. Elena set down her coffee and picked up her medical bag. Of course. Would you like to come with me? I can show you the technique. The chakran student's crystalline body vibrated with nervous energy. I am not human. I do not have your evolutionary advantages. You do not need them, Elena said kindly. You just need to understand that fear and aggression are temporary. Patience outlasts both. Come, I will show you. They walked toward the medical bay together. Elena's quiet footsteps and the chakran's crystalline clicks creating a rhythm on the metal floor. Behind them, Lisa watched and smiled. She understood now. Humans had not conquered the galaxy with weapons or technology. They had simply taught everyone else that some battles are won by those who can wait the longest. And in a universe full of predators built for quick strikes and rapid escapes, the patient persistence of humanity had become the gentlest and most powerful force of all. No armor, no sound, just the quiet certainty of a species that would never stop, never give up, never abandon those who needed help. And every predator in the galaxy recognized them instantly.